Hello everyone, welcome to another lab session. Now this lab session is also going to be on connecting networks using VPC peering. Now I will entreat you that if you haven't watched the last video that I uploaded, kindly do well to watch it because there are a lot of things that I explained in that video that I might not explain here. It was also on the same concept, but this is a different use case. You can find this use case in the Module 7 guided lab of our ALX AWS Solutions Architect Associate course. In this use case, we have two VPCs, the lab VPC and a shared VPC. In the lab VPC, there is an application server which is an inventory application deployed in a public subnet with a security group allowing HTTP traffic from anywhere. The lab VPC has an internet gateway attached to it for the application server to be accessed via the public internet. Now, the shared VPC doesn't have an internet gateway attached to it, which means that resources deployed in this VPC cannot be accessed via the public internet. There is a database instance deployed in a private subnet in this shared VPC, which we want our application server to do a read and write operation to this database instance. And that can be made possible through a peering connection between the two networks. So let's go to our management console and appreciate the resources that we have. So you can see our app server and it has a public IPv4 address. We will use this public IPv4 address later. Now on the security tab, you should see the security group attached to it and also the inbound rule that it is allowing. Of course, the outbound rule as well. And on the VPCs, you can see the lab VPC and the shared VPC. Also on database, you can see the database deployed there, and when you click on it, you should see the endpoint address. We'll also use this endpoint address later. So back to our instance, I'll copy the public IPv4 address, open a new tab and paste the address in there and press enter, and it will open the page for us to configure settings to connect to the database. Right, so I'll click on settings and I'll have the endpoint address pasted here. So let me go back and then copy this endpoint address and now paste it in there. The database is inventory, the username is, and the password. Now this details has been provided for us, and if you are a student enrolled in the ALX course, you should have it in your canvas. Now if I should come here and then click save, we'll be stuck in the endless loop for some time, and after that we'll have a 504 gateway timeout. Okay, so I'll pause the video here because we have to wait for some time. I'll pause the video here, and then once we get the error, I'll come back. Great, so this is the error that we have because currently the two networks are not connected together, and then we have configured our instance to point to a database instance which is in another network. So we need to connect these two networks so that the application server can be able to communicate with the database instance. So what I will do is that I'll go back to our page, but then I'll go back to the management console and then I'll head to what we call peering connections. So in peering connections, I'm going to create a peering connection between the lab VPC and the shared VPC. So I am naming it lab peer. The requester is the lab VPC and the acceptor is the shared VPC. I'll create the peering connection, and once the connection is created, I will have to accept it. Right, so I accept the peering connection. Now once this is done, we'll have to modify the route tables to route traffic coming from each of the VPCs to the peering connection. So first I will do that of the shared VPC, right, since it only has one route table attached to it. So I will go to actions and then edit the route. Now for the shared VPC, I will say that route all traffic coming from the lab VPC to the peering connection that we just established, and save changes. I'll go back to the route tables and I'll edit the lab public route table because that is a route table associated with the public subnet where the application server is deployed in. So I'll right click here and then I'll edit route. So for this, I'll also say that route all traffic coming from the shared VPC to the peering connection that we established. So we are done here. the security groups have been configured for us already, so we don't need to also do the security rules again, okay? Because we have the app security that allows the inbound rules, database inbound rules actually. So this is the so this is the app security group, sorry. It allows HTTP traffic from the internet, and then the database security group, which allows MySQL and then Aurora from the port range of 3306, and then the source is the CIDR for the lab VPC. So we are good to go. We don't need to do any of this. So now let's go back to our inventory application and then save again. And now that should connect to our database. So I can now communicate with the database instance by adding some inventory, okay, and I'll submit. I can add more. 30 this time and submit. Okay, I can go ahead and then delete the entries. Super. So that makes it possible for our application server to communicate with the database instance. So if we should go back to our architecture drawing, we should have a peering connection between both the lab VPC and the shared VPC, connecting the application server to the database instance, and as well as some route table configurations done to route the traffic coming from each of the instances to the peering connection. Awesome. So this is our final design, and since all the resources were provisioned for us, all we needed to do was to establish the peering connection between the lab VPC and the shared VPC, and also configure the route tables to route traffic to the peering connection. So that brings us to the end of this lab session on creating a VPC peering connection between networks. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you in another video.